Hello friends, I am Dr. Surya Prakash. Today we will be discussing about pressure source. In this topic, we will cover epidemiology, definition and location, classification, pathogenesis and risk factors, prevention, treatment, pressure ulcers treatment for each stage, and complications. Starting with definition and location. Pressure ulcers are localized areas of tissue necrosis that tend to occur when soft tissue is compressed between a bony prominence and an external surface for a prolonged period. These lesions are also called bed sores, decubitus ulcers, and pressure sores. Now, what are the most common locations over which the pressure ulcer occurs? Sacrum, greater trochanter, ischial tuberosity, malleolus, lateral as well as medial malleolus, heel, fibular head, and lastly scapula. This is the pictorial representation. I have tried to show the pressure areas when the patient lies down. As you can see, back of head, shoulder blades, elbow, coccyx, heels. And the second picture is when the patient is lying by his side, in which the pressure mainly comes to side of shoulder, pelvis, hip, and malleolus. This is the picture showing pressure areas when the patient is lying in a propped up posture. Now coming to classification, better say grading. There are mainly 6 grades of pressure source. 0. Intact skin with no visible erythema. 1A. Blanchable erythema of intact skin. 1B. Non-blanchable erythema of intact skin. 2. Partial thickness skin loss involving epidermis, dermis, or both. 3. Full thickness skin loss involving subcutaneous tissue that may extend down but not through underlying fascia. And 4th, full thickness skin loss with extensive destruction, tissue necrosis, damage to muscle, bone, or supporting structures. This picture is showing different grades of bed sores. In coming slides, I will also be showing you the clinical pictures of different grades of bed sores. This is the clinical picture showing how grade 1 and grade 2 bed sore appears clinically. In grade 1, you can clearly see blanchable erythema of intact skin, and the second picture is of grade 2 bed sore in which partial thickness skin loss involving epidermis and dermis can be seen. This is how grade 3 and grade 4 bed sore appears clinically. In grade 3, you can see there is full thickness skin loss leading to necrosis of subcutaneous tissue extending down, but it has not breached the fossa. In grade 4 type of bed sore, you can see there is full thickness skin loss with extensive destruction, and it has reached to the bone itself. Now continuing with the pathogenesis and risk factors for the development of bed sores. There are mainly 4 factors which are responsible for development of bed sore, that is pressure, shearing forces, friction and moisture. This diagram is showing how a pressure point develops because of the compression between the bone and the bed, or you can say mattress. This is a flow diagram showing the pathophysiology for the development of bed sore. In this, prolonged weight bearing and mechanical shear forces act on a particular soft tissue area overlying bony prominences. When this pressure exceeds the normal capillary perfusion pressure, that is 32 mm of mercury, this leads to occlusion and tearing of small blood vessels, which causes reduced tissue perfusion, ultimately leading to ischemic necrosis, which leads to the development of pressure sores. Now coming to the risk factors for the development of bed sore, which includes spinal cord injuries, traumatic brain injuries, neuromuscular disorders, immobility, malnourishment, fecal and urinary incontinence, altered level of consciousness, chronic systemic illnesses, fractures, aging skin, and decreased pain perception. As you can see, all these risk factors are mainly involved with prolonged immobilization of the patient. Risk factors for the development of bed sores can also be categorized according to 2 factors, extrinsic and intrinsic. Extrinsic will include excessive uniaxial pressure, friction and shear forces, impact injury, heat, moisture and posture. Whereas intrinsic factors will include immobility, sensory loss, age, disease, body type, poor nutrition, infection, and lastly, incontinence. Now coming to prevention. As we all know, prevention is better than cure. To prevent the risk of development of pressure ulcer, it is very much necessary to do the risk assessment, for which we select and use a method of risk assessment that ensures systematic evaluation of individual risk factors. Many risk assessment tool exists, but only the Norton scale and Braden scale have been tested extensively. Tools include the following risk factors: mobility, activity impairment, moisture, incontinence, and impaired nutrition. This is the Norton scale, which includes physical condition, mental condition, activity, mobility, and continence. Now coming to Braden risk assessment scale, which comprises of sensory perception, moisture, activity, mobility, nutrition, and lastly friction and shear. As we have discussed in the previous slides, that one of the main reasons for the development of pressure sore is immobility. So bed or chair bound individual or those whose ability to reposition is impaired should be considered at risk for pressure ulcer. Other additional risk factors such as immobility, moisture, incontinence, and nutritional deficit should also be taken into account to prevent the development of pressure sores. Now, once we have identified the risk factors for the development of pressure sore, what are the ways to prevent it? For bed-bound individuals, repositioning should be done at least every 2 hourly. Use of pillow or foam wedges to keep bony prominences from direct contact. Use of devices that totally relieve pressure on the heels. And lastly, avoid positioning directly on the trochanters. These are few pressure relieving devices that can be used for preventing the development of pressure sores. These include foam, air or water mattress, elbow protectors, heel protectors, and chair cushions. This is pressure relieving boot, which can also be used to prevent the development of pressure sore over heels. This is air mattress or called air bed. This is water bed. It is also used for the prevention of bed sore. The mechanism by which it prevents bed sore is it mainly distributes the pressure from a particular point to a larger area so that the pressure is equally distributed to a large area, which prevents the development of pressure ulcer. Continuing with the other ways to prevent pressure sore is to elevate the head of the bed as little and for as short time as possible. Use lifting devices to move rather than drag the individual during transfers and position change. Do not use donut type of devices. This is donut type of cushion which should not be used to prevent bed sore as they actually increase the pressure. For chair bound individuals, repositioning should be done every hourly. Patient should shift weight every 15 minutes. Pressure reducing devices for seating surfaces should be used, but do not use donut type of devices. Postural alignment, distribution of weight, balance and stability should be done also. Now, as a healthcare provider, we should inspect skin at least once a day. Individual bathing schedule. Hot water should be avoided. Mild cleansing agent should be used. Environmental factors such as low humidity and cold air should be maintained. Using of moisturizers for dry skin should be promoted. Massaging over bony prominences should be avoided. Proper positioning and transferring and turning technique should be followed. Lubricant should be used to prevent friction injuries. Monitor and documentation of interventions and outcome must be done. Then planning and implementation of nutritional support or even supplementation program, especially for nutritionally compromised individuals, should be made available. Now coming to the treatment part of the bed sore, which starts with the assessment, which includes history and physical examination, assessing complications, nutritional assessment and management, pain assessment and management, psychosocial assessment and management. There are mainly 4 basic components of pressure ulcer care, which includes debridement of necrotic tissue as and when needed, with subsequent assessment, cleansing of wound initially and after each dressing change, prevention, diagnosis and treatment of infection, using a dressing that keeps the ulcer bed moist and the surrounding area intact. Debridement helps in pressure sore healing because moist and devitalized tissue supports the growth of pathological organisms. Therefore, the removal of such tissue favorably alters the healing environment of the wound, and removal of devitalized tissue is considered necessary for wound healing. This picture shows granulation tissue and necrotic tissue. Necrotic tissue must be debrided for early and better healing of the pressure ulcer. Now the points which we have to keep in mind while cleaning the wound is to remove necrotic tissue, exudate and metabolic waste from the wound, minimize chemical and mechanical trauma, cleanse the wound initially and at each dressing it should be changed. Do not clean ulcer wounds with skin cleansers or antiseptics. Use of normal saline is preferred always. Now coming about the dressings. Keep the ulcer bed continuously moist. Wet to dry dressing should only be used for debridement. Keep the surrounding intact. Skin dry while keeping the ulcer bed moist. Other things which we have to keep in mind while doing dressing is controlling of exudate, but do not desiccate the ulcer bed. Eliminate the wound dead space by loosely filling all the cavities with dressing material, but do not overpack it. And monitoring of the dressing near the anus, as many a times it's get soiled. Adjunct therapies for better healing of pressure sores include electrical stimulation, hyperbaric oxygenation, which includes NPWT, which is negative pressure wound therapy, infrared and ultraviolet light, low energy laser radiation, ultrasound, topical agents and systemic drugs other than antibiotics. If the pus is coming out of the wound, then it can be sent for pus culture sensitivity. Systemic antibiotic therapy should only be provided to the patient showing the signs of sepsis or cellulitis or even osteomyelitis. Do not use topical antiseptics such as povidone iodine to reduce bacteria in wound tissue. Systemic antibiotics are not required for pressure ulcers without signs of local infection. Protect pressure ulcers from exogenous sources of contamination, such as urine and feces. Use of aseptic technique for the dressing should always be followed, which includes use of clean gloves for each patient. When treating multiple ulcers on the same time, attend the most contaminated ulcer last. Use sterile instruments to debride ulcers and use of clean dressings rather than sterile ones to treat pressure ulcers. Sometimes operative procedures are required for the repair of pressure ulcers, which include direct closure, skin grafting, skin flaps, mucocutaneous flaps, and free flaps. Monitoring is very important. Healing ulcers should be assessed regularly. Monitor the individual's general health, nutritional status, psychosocial support, pain level, and be alert for the signs of any kind of complications. The frequency of monitoring should be determined by the clinician based on the condition of the patient, ulcer status, rate of healing, and the healthcare setting. This is a good mnemonic which can be used in the management of ulcers, which goes like no ulcers skin. N, nutrition and fluid status. O for observation of skin. U for up and walking or assist with position changes. Lift, do not drag. Clean skin and continence care. Elevate hills. Risk assessment. Support surfaces. S is for surface selection. K for keep turning. Incontinence management. And N for nutrition. There is a large list of complications associated with pressure ulcers, which can include endocarditis, heterotrophic bone formation, maggots infestation, meningitis, perineal urethral fistula, pseudoaneurysm, septic arthritis, abscesses, squamous cell carcinoma, systemic complications of topical treatment, osteomyelitis, bacteremia, and even advancing cellulitis. This concludes our topic. Though this topic appears to be simple, but you have seen there is so much to learn in it. I have tried to make a simplified and complete video. If you like it, kindly support me by liking and subscribing it and sharing with your friends. This gives me motivation to make more videos for you guys. If you have any doubt, you can ask me in the comment section, and your suggestions are most welcome. Thanks a lot once again. Goodbye.